Alberta Primetime with Michael Higgins.
Welcome to Alberta Primetime. Ahead tonight, our politics panel on separatist sentiments at the UCP AGM. But first, finding a way forward.
If we can agree that the oil tanker ban is going to stay in place, then let's have those conversations. I think that would make life a lot better and easier in British Columbia in terms of our relationship with coastal First Nations.
We want to get as much buy-in, and we want to have as much benefit for British Columbians as we possibly can, and that includes British Columbia First Nations.
The shifting tone of pipeline talks between Alberta and B.C. on the heels of the Smith and Carney government signing a memorandum of understanding. So, what lies ahead as Alberta faces a July 1st timeline to submit a proposal to Ottawa's Major Projects Office? Joining us now, Richard Masson, an executive fellow at the University of Calgary School of Public Policy and former CEO of the Alberta Petroleum Marketing Commission. Richard, good to see you again, sir. Welcome back.
Great to be here, Michael.
All right. Albertans have long heard about federal regulations being an impediment. So how far does this MOU actually move the bar on bringing private sector investment into the pipeline picture?
Well, it starts to take away the big impediments that were there, like the oil and gas emissions cap. Of course, we have an industrial carbon price in Alberta. We've had one for a long time. And the way that the emissions cap was going to be implemented was another carbon price on top of that carbon price, and the two systems didn't work together. And so it was providing all kinds of confusion, and investors were just not interested in that, given all the other places that their money can go in the world. And so moving things like that away, they weren't going to work well anyways. The clean electricity regulations, all those things that were in that MOU start to make Canada more competitive. They're not there yet. Of course, many of these things are contingent on other things happening, but they're starting to show that the Canadian government and the Alberta government are willing to work together to try and bring investors back to our country and get things moving again.
Okay, so with that said, what is the responsibility now resting then on the shoulders of the Smith government in quarterbacking efforts to earn social license across the border in BC, while also convincing those potential investors to get on board?
It's a huge challenge for them. So, we can put it in the frame of what happened on previous pipelines. Enbridge worked on Northern Gateway for years. By the time it was finally canceled, they had lost $600 million after years and years of senior management effort. When we look at the Trans Mountain expansion, Ian Anderson and the team there, they worked for years working on consultation up and down the line. It ended up in court a couple times and ended up 6 times over budget. And so the environment for some private sector company to want to step up and say, okay, I'm willing to try this again, is not very good. You've got to be able to convince your board and your shareholders that it's a good use of your money to do that. So in the meantime, Alberta has dedicated only $14 million towards consultation, route selection, and design. And there's many, many things that need to be sorted out. Will this pipeline even be economic? Will producers want to sign up for 20-year commitments on it? There's so many things to sort out before we know if this is a real project.
And speaking of sorting things out, we heard the clips of the two premiers off the top, notably David Eby. What's to be made of him being open now to the conversation if there's an agreement on the tanker ban staying in place, that tanker ban element? How does that further the conversation?
It's hard to understand exactly what he's thinking about, because the ports that are available that have been looked at least before are Kitimat and Prince Rupert in the north, which would be subject to the tanker ban, and Burnaby, Vancouver area in the south, which isn't, where TMX goes. The Enbridge, when they were looking at Northern Gateway, selected Kitimat for a number of reasons. I know that there's challenges with getting a major pipeline over the mountain ranges and through the valleys to get to Prince Rupert. It's possible, I suppose, but it won't be easy if that's the route that's selected. But it seems like Premier Smith has ruled out Kitimat and is focused on Prince Rupert, and Prince Rupert, as far as I understand, is squarely in the tanker ban.
All right, we talk a lot here about the prospect of a pipeline, but to what degree does this MOU stand to unlock investment on the production side in Alberta?
I think that's, to me, the more immediate near-term benefit. We don't need a pipeline right away to have production start to grow quicker. Trans Mountain has said they could probably debottleneck by 400,000 barrels a day. Enbridge has said they could do 450,000 barrels a day. That's a lot of additional capacity that can be brought on stream. The reason that will come on stream is because production is growing quicker and producers are willing to take that capacity. It's hard for me to see with those two things most likely to be able to be accomplished. A 1 million barrel a day pipeline would require really rapid growth, as rapid as we've ever seen. And that's another challenge for backstopping a pipeline. You would need probably 700,000 barrels a day of 20-year commitments from producers. And there are not that many producers anymore, so each of them would have to make big commitments over 100,000 barrels a day. It just doesn't seem very likely given where we're at. But let's hope that we can actually start to move the system faster and move to a higher level of production growth. That'll really add value for Canada.
And is that purely about expanding oil sands production to feed those pipelines, or could there be revitalization on the conventional side, pump some optimism into communities across the province that have long relied on the oil patch?
Well, there's two parts to that in my mind. The oil sands will remain the driver. We have many projects. We know how to operate them. They can grow their production. They right now are doing about 100,000 barrels a year growth. It could start to move up quicker to, let's say, 200,000 barrels a year growth. But in order to ship bitumen, you actually need diluent, and diluent comes from natural gas. And so if we were going to build this 1 million barrel a day pipeline, we would need an incremental 300,000 barrels a day of diluent. So you'd go after that through liquids-rich gas in the Duvernay and the Montney. I heard a calculation that said it would require 7 billion cubic feet a day of new gas production in order to provide the diluent to meet the pipeline requirement. So all these things are intertwined. It's really a question about if we can find a way to develop our resources more effectively, they will lever off each other, and the growth will benefit many, many different communities.
All right, one more question for you, Richard. Massive layoffs announced at Algoma Steel in Sault Ste. Marie, Ontario this week. That's a plant that produces pipe. How does an unfortunate situation like that maybe potentially accelerate pressure across the board here in this pushing through a new pipeline?
Well, it's difficult to say because each company makes different kinds of steel in different ways. But what I would say is a pipeline to the West Coast probably is a minimum of 5 years before it actually meets steel in the ground. You've got to go through a couple of years of design. You've got to go through a couple of years of right-of-way acquisition and consultation. In this case, we would need to include Indigenous groups through ownership interests. That's never easy. And then you've got to go through a regulatory process that even if there are some major project office supports, would still be very detailed and complicated. So it's at least 4 years, 5 years before we're going to start constructing anything. I wouldn't hold my breath if I was a steel worker hoping this is going to help.
Well, a very long road ahead, no matter how you look at it. As always, appreciate your perspective, Richard. Thank you kindly, sir.
Anytime, Michael. Thank you.
Richard Masson is an executive fellow with the University of Calgary School of Public Policy.